Your mind is a factory that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever stopping. Right now, as you read these words, it is producing something. The question is not whether your mental factory is operational. The question is, what exactly is coming off your production line? Because here is the brutal truth that no one wants to tell you. If you are not deliberately controlling what your mind produces, chaos is making those decisions for you. And chaos has zero interest in your success, your peace, or your future. Chaos is not some abstract philosophical concept. It is a specific, measurable pattern of mental activity that neuroscience can now map with precision. Your brain, this 3-pound biological supercomputer, processes roughly 70,000 thoughts per day. Most of them are repetitive, most of them are negative, and most of them are completely unconscious. You are running a factory where the workers have no supervisor, the machines have no maintenance schedule, and the quality control department does not exist. Henry Ford revolutionized industry by understanding one fundamental principle: control the process, and you control the outcome. He did not motivate his workers with inspiring speeches. He built systems that made excellence inevitable. Ford understood that human nature, left to its own devices, defaults to chaos. Random action, wasted motion, inefficient processes. His genius was creating assembly lines that eliminated chaos through design, not willpower. Your mind needs the same revolution. Let me show you what chaos looks like in real time. You wake up, and before your feet touch the floor, your mind is already running. Did I respond to that email? What if I am late to that meeting? Why did I say that stupid thing yesterday? What if they think I am incompetent? Your nervous system, which should be calmly preparing you for the day ahead, is instead firing stress hormones into your bloodstream like a factory dumping toxic waste into a river. This is not anxiety. This is an uncontrolled production process. Your amygdala, the alarm system in your brain, is triggering fear responses to situations that have not happened yet, may never happen, and even if they do happen, you cannot control them anyway. You are manufacturing suffering out of thin air. Ford would look at this process and immediately identify the problem: massive waste, energy being burned with zero productive output. But here is where it gets worse. Your brain has something called the default mode network, a system that activates whenever you are not focused on a specific task. This network is supposed to help you process experiences, plan for the future, and understand yourself. Instead, for most people, it has become a rumination machine. It runs the same mental loops over and over, reinforcing neural pathways of worry, regret, and anxiety. You know that voice in your head that never shuts up? That constant mental chatter that comments on everything, judges everyone including yourself, and creates elaborate stories about disasters that will probably never occur. That is your default mode network, running without a supervisor. Neuroscience has discovered something fascinating and terrifying about how your brain works. It operates on prediction, not reaction. Your brain is constantly generating models of what it expects to happen next, and then comparing reality to those predictions. When reality matches the prediction, you feel calm. When reality differs from the prediction, you feel stress. Here is the problem. If your prediction system is trained on chaos, anxiety, and worst-case scenarios, your brain will constantly predict disaster. And because your nervous system prepares your body for whatever your brain predicts, you end up living in a state of permanent emergency. Your heart rate elevates, your cortisol levels spike, your immune system weakens, and your decision-making abilities deteriorate. You are not experiencing the chaos of external reality. You are experiencing the chaos of your own prediction system. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years before we had MRI machines to prove it. Marcus Aurelius, who ran the largest empire on Earth while dealing with plague, war, and betrayal, wrote something that neuroscience would not confirm for 20 centuries. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was not being poetic. He was describing the dichotomy of control, the most powerful cognitive filter ever developed. The Stoics divided all of existence into two categories: things you control and things you do not control. Things you control include your thoughts, your actions, your responses, your effort, and your character. Everything else, literally everything else in the universe, falls into the category of things you do not control. This is not philosophy, this is engineering. Henry Ford built his entire empire on identifying exactly what he could control and ignoring everything he could not. He could not control the price of steel, so he bought his own steel mills. He could not control worker efficiency with traditional methods, so he redesigned the entire production process. He did not waste energy fighting reality. He built systems that worked within reality. Your mind needs the same approach. Right now, your mental factory is trying to control the weather, other people's opinions, past events, and future outcomes. This is like trying to run a car factory where half your workers are assigned to change the laws of physics. It is not just inefficient, it is insane. And yet, this is how most people operate their minds every single day. They worry about things they cannot change. They ruminate on events they cannot undo. And they create elaborate fantasies about futures they cannot guarantee. This is not thoughtfulness. This is chaos, masquerading as productivity. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out. You send an important email to your boss. After you hit send, your mind immediately begins manufacturing scenarios. What if she thinks I am incompetent? What if I get fired? What if I cannot pay my rent? What if I end up homeless? Notice what just happened. In less than 10 seconds, your brain took you from a simple email to living under a bridge. This is your prediction system running wild. But here is the critical insight. You are treating these thoughts as if they are reality. You are not experiencing homelessness. You are experiencing the thought of homelessness. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference. To your body, the imagined disaster is just as real as an actual disaster. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense up, and your cortisol levels spike. You are having a full physiological response to something that only exists in your imagination. This is the ultimate waste. You are burning resources, damaging your health, and destroying your peace of mind to fight enemies that do not exist. Ford would fire this entire mental production line immediately. The Stoics had a specific practice for this called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But it was not what you think. They were not teaching pessimism or catastrophizing. They were teaching mental simulation. The difference is crucial. Catastrophizing is when your mind randomly generates worst-case scenarios and treats them as predictions. Mental simulation is when you deliberately imagine potential challenges so you can prepare practical responses. One is chaos, the other is control. Here is how it works. Instead of letting your mind randomly generate the thought, what if I get fired, and then spiraling into panic, you deliberately think through the scenario step by step. If I lost my job, what would I actually do? I would file for unemployment. I would update my resume. I would reach out to my network. I would reduce my expenses. I would probably find another position within 3 months. By walking through the actual steps, you transform an abstract terror into a concrete problem with concrete solutions. Your nervous system calms down because you have shifted from pure threat response to solution mode. This is the difference between being controlled by chaos and mastering it. But here is where most people get it wrong. They think mastering chaos means eliminating all uncertainty, controlling every variable, and creating a perfectly predictable life. This is not only impossible, it is the opposite of what actually works. Ford did not eliminate chaos in his factories. He built systems that could function despite chaos. When one machine broke down, the line kept running. When one supplier failed, he had alternatives ready. When one worker quit, another could step in immediately. The resilience was built into the system. Your mind needs the same approach. The goal is not to eliminate chaos from your life. The goal is to build mental systems that function effectively regardless of what chaos throws at you. The Stoics called this inner citadel. Your mind becomes a fortified space that chaos cannot penetrate, not because you have built walls to keep chaos out, but because you have built systems that make chaos irrelevant. Think about what chaos actually is. Chaos is not external events being unpredictable. Chaos is your internal response being uncontrolled. You cannot control whether you get stuck in traffic, but you absolutely can control whether you spend that time in rage or use it to listen to a podcast. You cannot control whether your colleague is rude to you, but you absolutely can control whether you ruminate about it all day or let it go in 10 seconds. The chaos is not happening to you. The chaos is happening in you. Neuroscience has confirmed something the Stoics intuited. Your brain is plastic, meaning it is constantly rewiring itself based on how you use it. Every thought you think strengthens certain neural pathways and weakens others. Every action you take reinforces specific patterns and diminishes alternatives. Your brain is literally a factory that builds itself while it operates. If you spend your days worrying, your brain becomes exceptionally good at worrying. If you spend your days solving problems, your brain becomes exceptionally good at solving problems. This is not metaphor. This is measurable, physical change in your brain structure. The question is, what are you training your brain to do? Right now, most people are training their brains to be chaos amplifiers. Something small goes wrong, and their mind immediately escalates it into a catastrophe. Someone gives them mild criticism, and their mind converts it into total rejection. They face one setback, and their mind declares complete failure. This is not natural. This is trained. And anything that is trained can be retrained. Henry Ford understood something about human nature that most people miss. Humans are not lazy. They are efficient. Your brain is always looking for the most energy-efficient way to operate. The problem is, your brain cannot tell the difference between efficiently producing excellence and efficiently producing garbage. If you have spent years training your brain to efficiently produce anxiety, that is exactly what it will keep doing because it requires less energy than changing. This is why willpower does not work. Willpower is trying to override your brain's efficient patterns with pure force. It is like trying to stop an assembly line by standing in front of it and pushing back. You might slow it down temporarily, but eventually you are going to get run over. The solution is not more force. The solution is redesigning the assembly line. You need to build new patterns that are more efficient than the old patterns. This is how you actually create lasting change. Not by fighting your nature, but by reprogramming it. Let me show you how this works in practice. Right now, when something goes wrong, your automatic response is probably some version of panic, blame, or despair. This is your current assembly line. It is efficient at producing suffering. To change this, you do not try to suppress the panic. You build a new response pattern that is even more efficient. The Stoics had a specific protocol for this. First, pause. Just 2 seconds of deliberate breathing before you respond. This interrupts the automatic pattern. Second, ask yourself the question, is this something I control? If the answer is no, your job is to accept it and move on. If the answer is yes, your next question is, what is the most effective action I can take right now? Not what do I wish I could do, not what would be fair, not what would make me feel better. What is the most effective action available to me in this moment? This is how you shift from chaos to control, not by denying reality, not by forcing outcomes, but by focusing exclusively on what you can actually influence. But here is the part that requires real honesty. Most of the time, you do not want to give up control of things you cannot actually control. You like worrying about other people's opinions because it creates the illusion that you can influence them if you just worry hard enough. You like ruminating on past mistakes because it creates the illusion that you can somehow change them if you just think about them long enough. You like catastrophizing about the future because it creates the illusion that you can prevent disaster if you just anticipate every possibility. These mental habits feel productive. They feel like you are doing something, but they are not doing anything except draining your energy and training your brain to be more chaotic. Ford would look at this and ask a simple question. What is the output of this process? If you spend 2 hours worrying about a situation, what did you actually produce? Usually the answer is nothing except increased anxiety and decreased effectiveness. That is a failed production line. Shut it down. The Stoics had a practice called amor fati, love of fate. Modern people usually interpret this as some kind of passive acceptance, like you are supposed to smile and pretend everything is fine when it clearly is not. That is not what it means. Amor fati is the recognition that reality is your raw material. Whatever happens, that is what you have to work with. Fighting reality is like a car manufacturer complaining that steel is too hard. Steel is what it is. Your job is to shape it into something useful, not wish it was different. When chaos arrives in your life, and it will arrive whether you like it or not, you have exactly two options. Option one, you can fight the fact that chaos exists, wish it was not there, demand that reality be different, and waste all your energy on resistance. Option two, you can accept that chaos has arrived and immediately shift into solution mode. What can I do with this? How can I use this? What opportunity does this create? One response keeps you stuck in chaos. The other response masters it. Let me be specific about what this looks like. You get laid off from your job. This is chaos. Your mind immediately wants to spiral into panic, blame, and catastrophe. This is your old assembly line. Instead, you pause. You ask yourself, is this something I control? The answer is no. You did not control the decision to lay you off. So your job is to accept it completely. Not like it, not agree with it, just accept that it is reality. Then you ask, what do I control now? You control how you spend the next hour, the next day, the next week. You control whether you update your resume today or waste the day in self-pity. You control whether you reach out to your network or isolate yourself. You control whether you use this as motivation to find something better or as an excuse to give up. The layoff itself is chaos. Your response is where mastery lives. And here is what most people miss. Mastering chaos does not mean you feel calm and peaceful all the time. It means you function effectively regardless of how you feel. The Stoics were not teaching you to eliminate emotions. They were teaching you to prevent emotions from controlling your decisions. Emotions are information, not instructions. When you feel anxious, that is your nervous system telling you it perceives a threat. The information is useful, but the instruction your anxiety wants to give you, which is usually to avoid, panic, or freeze, is often completely wrong. Ford understood that factories need feedback systems, gauges, meters, indicators that show when something is going wrong. Your emotions are your feedback system. Anxiety tells you your prediction system is running worst-case scenarios. Anger tells you something has violated your expectations. Sadness tells you you have experienced a loss. These are valuable signals. The problem is when you treat the signal as the reality. You feel anxious about a presentation, and instead of recognizing that as information, your mind is predicting you might fail. You treat the anxiety itself as proof that you will fail. This is like looking at a low fuel gauge in your car and concluding that your engine is broken. The gauge is just information. What you do with that information is what matters. When you feel anxious about the presentation, the effective response is to prepare more thoroughly, not to spiral into panic. When you feel angry at someone's behavior, the effective response is to set a boundary or have a conversation, not to ruminate for hours. When you feel sad about a loss, the effective response is to process the grief and then move forward, not to let it paralyze you indefinitely. Emotions are supposed to be temporary feedback signals, not permanent operating systems. Here is where the neuroscience gets really interesting. Your brain has two primary networks that are usually in opposition. The default mode network, which we talked about earlier, is active when you are not focused on anything specific. This is the network that generates mind-wandering, rumination, and self-referential thinking. Then you have the task-positive network, which activates when you are focused on a specific goal or activity. This is the network that allows you to solve problems, learn skills, and take action. Here is the critical insight. These networks cannot both be dominant at the same time. When one is active, the other is suppressed. This means that the single most effective way to master chaos is to deliberately activate your task-positive network. When your mind starts spiraling into worry, the solution is not to try to stop worrying. The solution is to focus on a specific task. It can be as simple as counting your breaths or as complex as solving a problem at work. The key is specific focus. This is why the Stoics were obsessed with action. Not because action is inherently virtuous, but because action shifts your brain out of rumination mode and into effectiveness mode. When Marcus Aurelius felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities of empire, he did not sit around contemplating how difficult his life was. He got up and dealt with the next thing that needed his attention. One task at a time, one decision at a time, one action at a time. This is how you build mastery over chaos, not through grand philosophical insights, but through the simple act of doing what is in front of you. Let me give you a protocol you can implement right now. This is not theory. This is a tested system that works if you actually use it. First thing in the morning, before you check your phone, before you let the chaos of the day flood into your mind, you take 60 seconds to set your intention. Not your goals for the day, your intention. Your intention is the principle that will guide your decisions. For example, your intention might be respond. Do not react or focus on what I control or make progress, not perfection. One simple principle that serves as your decision filter for the day. Write it down. Put it somewhere you will see it multiple times during the day. This is your quality control standard. Every decision you make, every response you have, gets filtered through this principle. Does this action align with my intention or not? This single practice will eliminate more chaos from your life than any other technique because it gives your mind a clear production standard. Instead of responding randomly to whatever happens, you have a consistent filter. Second, you identify your 3 critical actions for the day, not your to-do list, which is usually chaos disguised as productivity. Your 3 critical actions are the specific things that, if you accomplish nothing else, will make this day a success. These are usually not urgent. They are important. They are the actions that move your life forward, not just respond to other people's demands. Write them down. Schedule specific time blocks to complete them. Treat these blocks as non-negotiable appointments with yourself. This is how you ensure that your mental factory is producing something valuable, not just processing other people's requests. Everything else is secondary. If you complete your 3 critical actions, the day is a win regardless of what chaos occurs around them. If you do not complete them, the day is a loss regardless of how busy you were. This is brutal clarity about what actually matters. Third, you implement a shutdown ritual at the end of each day. This is critical, and most people skip it completely. Your brain needs a clear signal that the workday is over. Without this signal, your mind will keep processing work problems all evening, ruining your sleep and your relationships. Your shutdown ritual can be as simple as closing your laptop, reviewing what you accomplished, writing down anything that needs attention tomorrow, and then saying out loud, "Shutdown complete." This sounds ridiculous until you try it. The verbal cue gives your brain permission to stop working. Combined with the physical action of closing your laptop and the cognitive action of reviewing the day, you create a clear transition. This is not optional. This is how you prevent your work chaos from bleeding into your personal life. Ford built walls between different sections of his factories to prevent contamination. You need walls between different areas of your life for the same reason. Fourth, you build a chaos response protocol. This is what you do when unexpected chaos hits, and it will hit. Something goes wrong at work. Someone says something that triggers you. You receive bad news. Your automatic response is probably some version of panic, anger, or despair. Instead, you follow your protocol. Pause for 5 seconds and take 3 deep breaths. This interrupts your automatic response. Ask yourself, is this something I control? If yes, what is the most effective action available to me right now? If no, what is the most effective way to accept this and move forward? Take that action immediately. This is not about feeling calm. This is about maintaining effectiveness regardless of circumstances. You are building a mental assembly line that produces effective responses instead of chaotic reactions. At first, this will feel mechanical and forced. That is normal. You are literally building new neural pathways. With practice, effective response becomes your new automatic setting. This is how you actually transform your brain from a chaos amplifier into a chaos master. Fifth, you practice negative visualization daily. This is the Stoic practice of imagining loss before it occurs. Every morning, you spend 2 minutes imagining that today might be your last day with the people you love, your last day in your home, your last day of health. This sounds morbid, but it is actually the opposite. When you regularly contemplate loss, you stop taking things for granted. You appreciate what you have while you have it. And when loss actually occurs, which it inevitably will, you are not shocked into paralysis because you have already mentally prepared for it. This is not pessimism. This is resilience training. You are installing shock absorbers in your mind so that when chaos hits, you can absorb the impact and keep functioning. Most people avoid thinking about loss because they think it will make them sad. What actually makes you sad is being completely unprepared when loss occurs. The Stoics understood that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain is the unavoidable experience of loss. Suffering is what happens when you are emotionally unprepared for loss and spend years fighting the reality of what happened. Negative visualization is how you build emotional preparation. You are not inviting disaster. You are simply acknowledging that disaster is possible and deciding in advance how you will respond to it. Let me address the objection that is probably forming in your mind right now. This all sounds cold, mechanical, calculating. Where is the room for spontaneity, emotion, passion? Here is what you need to understand. Mastering chaos does not eliminate emotion. It purifies emotion. Right now, most of your emotional energy is being wasted on things you cannot control. You are angry at traffic, anxious about other people's opinions, sad about the past, worried about the future. This is not deep feeling. This is emotional noise. When you master chaos, when you stop wasting energy on things you cannot control, you have far more energy available for things that actually matter. Your relationships become deeper because you are actually present instead of lost in rumination. Your work becomes more satisfying because you are focused on creation instead of reaction. Your experiences become richer because you are engaging with reality instead of fighting it. The Stoics were not emotionless robots. Marcus Aurelius loved his wife deeply. Seneca cherished his friends. Epictetus cared about his students. The difference was that their emotions were directed toward what they could actually influence, not scattered across 1,000 things they could not control. Henry Ford was not a cold, unfeeling industrialist, despite what history sometimes portrays. He cared deeply about his workers, which is why he paid them more than double the industry standard. He cared about efficiency, yes, but not for its own sake. He cared about efficiency because it allowed him to produce affordable cars that transformed how people lived. His control over his production process was not about control for its own sake. It was about ensuring that his factories actually produced what they were designed to produce instead of wasting resources on chaos. Your mind needs the same approach. Mastering your mental chaos is not about becoming robotic. It is about ensuring that your mental energy goes toward producing what you actually want in life instead of being wasted on random reactions to circumstances you cannot control. This is not suppression. This is direction. Let me give you the final piece that ties this all together. The Stoics had a concept called sympathia, which roughly translates to interconnectedness. They understood that you are not a separate entity fighting against a chaotic universe. You are part of the universe, and the universe is part of you. The chaos you experience is not attacking you from outside. The chaos you experience is what happens when your internal patterns are misaligned with external reality. When you expect reality to be different than it is, you experience chaos. When you accept reality as it is and work within it, you experience flow. This is not passive acceptance that nothing can change. This is active recognition that change only happens when you work with reality, not against it. Ford did not change the nature of steel by wishing it was different. He changed what could be built with steel by understanding its properties and working within them. You do not change your mind by wishing it was different. You change your mind by understanding how it works and building systems that align with its design. Your brain is not broken. Your brain is untrained. The chaos you experience is not a defect. It is the natural result of running a complex system without clear protocols. Here is the truth that no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. You are responsible for mastering your own chaos. Not because it is fair, not because you caused it, not because you deserve it, simply because no one else can do it for you. Your therapist cannot do it for you. Your partner cannot do it for you. Your self-help books cannot do it for you. They can provide tools, guidance, and support. But the actual work of building new mental patterns, implementing protocols, and maintaining discipline is entirely your responsibility. This is not a burden. This is power. If you were dependent on external circumstances to give you peace, you would never have it because external circumstances are always changing. But because peace comes from internal patterns, and internal patterns are something you can control, peace is always available to you. Not easy, not automatic, but available. The question is whether you are willing to do what it takes to build it. So here is what happens next. You have two options. Option 1, you close this video, feel momentarily inspired, and then return to your old patterns. Your mental chaos continues producing the same results it has always produced. This is not judgment. This is just what most people do. They consume information, feel good about consuming it, and then change nothing. Option 6 months from now, you are dealing with the exact same mental chaos you are dealing with today. Option 2, you actually implement what you just learned. You build your intention-setting practice. You identify your 3 critical actions each day. You install your shutdown ritual. You develop your chaos response protocol. You practice negative visualization. You train your brain to function effectively regardless of circumstances. This option requires daily discipline. It requires you to catch yourself when you start spiraling into chaos and deliberately redirect your attention to what you control. It requires you to build systems and then maintain those systems even when you do not feel like it. But 6 months from now, your life looks fundamentally different. Not because your circumstances changed, but because your response to circumstances changed. You still face challenges, setbacks, and unexpected problems. But instead of being controlled by them, you handle them efficiently and move forward. This is what mastery of chaos actually looks like. Not perfect peace, but consistent effectiveness. If you made it this far, I already know something about you. You are not looking for quick fixes or magical solutions. You are looking for tools that actually work in reality. That tells me you are exactly the kind of person who can build this. This channel exists for people who understand that your mind is your most important asset and that mastering it is not optional, it is essential. Every week I break down one specific aspect of how your mind works and, more importantly, how you can work with it instead of against it. If that resonates with you, subscribe to this channel, not because I am asking, but because you deserve to have a resource that treats you like an intelligent adult who is capable of doing hard things. The next video is already ready and it is going to add another critical piece to your mental operating system.